104.7 The Cave, KKLH, Marshfield, Springfield. Broadcasting from the Lorenz Plumbing, Heating, and Air Studios. Your home for the Kansas City Chiefs.
Touchdown! Kansas City!
It's Ned Talk, your live and local Chiefs pregame show. Hosted by Ned Reynolds, Joe Western, and the B-Team. Proud members of the Chiefs Radio Network on 104.7 The Cave.
Ned, I have two words for you, and I want to get your instant take on this. Your hot take. Ned's hot take.
Well, I'm hesitant to ask what the two words are.
Torpedo bats.
Ooh. All of that.
Well, I think you're probably making reference to the composite bats that are used in college and high school.
No, I'm not.
The New York Yankees.
Yeah.
That's what you're talking about.
Yeah, the torpedo bats that they wielded yesterday against the Milwaukee Brewers.
How many? Was it 8 home runs?
Nine home
home
runs. Yeah.
Including the first 3 pitches of the game. That poor pitcher, he is shell-shocked. I don't even know who it was.
Nestor Cortez.
Oh, Nestor Cortez.
I could throw 3 pitches and not give up 3 home runs in a row. I wouldn't find the strike zone or maybe make it to the plate. But it'd be a 3-0 count, not a 3-0 deficit.
Right.
Utterly incredible. And one of them, Paul Goldschmidt, who is not necessarily a long ball hitter, but he's more of a place hitter. But he had one of the home runs in the first inning. And so did Judge. What did Judge end up with?
He had 3.
3 of them.
3 home runs in 4 innings.
Yep.
20-9. The Yankees won that game over the
So they
Milwaukee
missed an extra
Brewers.
point.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, missed the extra.
No, they
point.
went for 2 because there was
they
a
did.
penalty to put it to the 1-yard line.
It's just one of those things that happens.
It's Ned Talk on 104.7 The Cave, your local live sports talk show. I'm Joe Weston. That's Ned Reynolds, Alex Scott, Josh Roberts. We're in the studio today, and it's fun because we are starting out talking about baseball right away, right out of the gate.
And we will be talking about baseball, too, as it goes on. Of course, there are adjuncts. The Masters is coming up here in it's week after this. And then you'll have the hockey and the NBA, and of course the Final Four is coming up next weekend. So there are a lot of adjuncts going on in the sports world, but baseball is, in my opinion, the foundation.
Let me ask you this: Is there any sport that comes close to baseball opening day for their opening day?
Not in my opinion.
No, mine either.
No, I would agree with that too. Baseball is unique. There's so much excitement around opening day for baseball.
Of course, you have to understand, too, how the game has morphed. Cincinnati is the oldest of all the franchises, and Major League Baseball always decreed, or used to, that the games or the season would begin in Cincinnati. They played by themselves. It was Cincinnati against whomever, and that was the only game. Now it's all changed. Everybody opens up on, in this case, March 27th. And in the Cardinals' case, they probably have, in my opinion, the most iconic of all the openers. They have all the old-timers there, and they have the Clydesdales going out. And that in and of itself is unique in Major League Baseball. But the whole ceremonies, I did see one that kind of morphed things a little bit, and that was the opening in Miami where they did not have a sellout. The Miami Marlins had a good crowd, but not a sellout. And in Tampa, of course, they had a sellout. They're going to every game because they only seat 10,000 people.
Wow.
But the fact is, yes, baseball probably has the most impressive and iconic of all the opening ceremonies.
It's a holiday, and I think one thing that plays into its favor is even just the timing. Winter's over, spring's here, baseball's back. It's just everyone's excited to get outside again. You're cooped up the winter months, the weather sucks, and all of a sudden now baseball's kind of the invitation to get back outside. Yep. It's like, hey, look at that, we're here. When the NFL starts, you're sick of summer. It's like there's that the weather doesn't play in there. NBA and NHL are inside, but it's just everything's blooming. Baseball comes back. It's just exciting to get out. And I've got to go a couple years ago to Busch's opening, and it really was something special to see the Clydesdales out and all the red jackets, and it was a sellout crowd. Place was really excited. So yeah, it's really, really fun, and it's good to have it back.
I watched the game. I was off this last week, and I watched the Yankees game, and first of all, I love the broadcast that they did. Joe Buck, and he was partnered with Joe Girardi, and I forget who the announcer's name. He's the play-by-play guy, a former Major League Baseball player for the Milwaukee Brewers. So they had both sides sitting in the studio with Joe Buck, and really nice broadcast, really nice job. And one of them said that this is playoff atmosphere. First game of the season. Right away, first game of the season. Because everybody wants to get off to being 1-0. Mm-hmm. They want to, and then after that, if you don't win, you want to get that first win. But if you get that first win under your belt, you feel like, well, 162? No, that's possible. We can do this.
Mm-hmm. Well, the Los Angeles Dodgers literally could.
Well, so could our Cardinals, 2-0.
Yeah, they
just
are
like
Cardinals.
We all predicted.
A little bit of a change in how things are done. The Dodgers have bludgeoned teams to death, and the Cardinals kind of finessed them and had a break here and a break there, but got some pretty good pitching out of it. But it's the Minnesota Twins. How good are they? That's the question. I wonder.
How are the Royals doing so far? I know they got a tough customer in the Guardians right away.
Well, the Royals lost their opener. Of course, that went extra innings, and really Kansas City kind of gave it away. Yesterday's game, again, the Kansas City's good. They're a very good baseball team, and they're going to have a winning record this year. But you can't make a judgment on the early going. It's a false reading on almost every team, except maybe the Yankees and Dodgers, and they're pretty good.
We'll see. You know, I'm optimistic. I'm a little curious how the torpedo bat thing is going to play out because there's a lot of people upset, especially since they're the only team currently that has the torpedo bat. From what I'm understanding about it is that in the middle of the bat, right at the label, that is where the wood is compacted the most and gives you the hardest hit off of that bat.
Where's the cork?
But yeah, that's what I was thinking too.
Ask Manny Ramirez.
Or Craig Nettles. I mean,
right.
So when a team goes out and hits 9 home runs, what happened? And I saw the story come across as soon as the game was over. Sporting News put it up first, and they were like, Yankees using torpedo bats designed by physicists.
MIT physicist, and also Aaron Judge probably got a steroid test, a surprise random steroid test this morning. Just so happens to be your turn. Nothing to do with the 3 home runs you hit yesterday. As I've seen, though, it's calling into question, but one, it's been 2 games. 9 home runs has been hit in a game before without this bat, and 2, the MLB has come out and said everything about it fits the rules and regulations of their bat. So if it fits, then if you don't like if you feel like it's an unfair advantage, well, go make your own. It's like it's time for you to get your own torpedo bat, and there's in any sport when you swing an instrument, the tennis racket has evolved, the golf club has evolved, the baseball bat has evolved, and if someone's got the leading one, it's on you to match it at this point if it's within the confines of the rules.
Just it. Within the context of how the rules are written, you make the analogy of tennis, and that is, oh my God, the old wood rackets that had no flexibility at all, and Jimmy Connors and the guys when they were all Kenny Rosewall, when they were playing the game back in, the 30s, 40s, and 50s, that's what they played with. Now, you swing that thing, you can whip that tennis racket unless you're 83 years old, and then you can't do it anymore.
It's Ned Talk on 104.7 The Cave. We're talking about baseball, which is great. How are your Cubs doing, Josh?
Well, they lost the 2 games against the Dodgers in Japan, but they won their next game. I can't remember if they played yesterday.
They did, and beat the Diamondbacks 4-3.
Okay, so they're 2-2. They've beaten the Diamondbacks twice, and they lost to the Dodgers twice. So
a lot of us are going to be doing that.
Well, yeah, I'm not upset about that because I know that in the first game against the Diamondbacks they beat them 10-6. So, yay Cubs scoring 10 runs. Good for you guys. So they're off to a good start.
I thought it might be a little bit different. I watched that first game of the season, Yankees and the Brewers. It was a well-pitched game. I was very impressed. I said on this show, I think last week, that Milwaukee, who do they scare? And the Yankees have bludgeoned them yesterday, but that's a good team. I was really impressed with the way that they play, their style of play, and I think Arenado is the name of their head of their rotation. Very good pitcher. Really, really good pitcher.
Lost in the 9 home run barrage is that Milwaukee scored 9 runs yesterday. That's going to win you.
Max Fried.
That's going to win you many more games.
You have to
lose.
understand, though, that in the game of baseball, when a team gets a huge lead like that, the pitchers are instructed, put it over the plate. Let them hit it. Let the defense take care of things. Don't try to pitch your spectacular game unless you have a no-hitter going. That's a little different. But they're told to relax a little bit. I've seen it happen. So the 20-9 may be a little bit misleading in terms of the fact that the Brewers did have 9 runs.
Yeah.
I find it interesting because the pitcher that gave up the 3 home runs in the first inning yesterday was not Fidel Castro, but Nestor Cortez. Fidel Castro,
again?
he was a baseball player, by the way.
Yeah,
he deserved every home run that he allowed.
Nestor Cortez, who played for the Yankees, and they got Devin Williams, and I watched Devin Williams pitch. This is the first time I've ever seen him pitch, and he pitched in the opener, came out for the save. Earl Weaver had a reliever he used to call Halfback. And the reason he called him Halfback was he smoked a half pack of cigarettes when he was on the mound. I think Devin Williams is a full pack guy.
Oh,
it was ugly. It was really ugly. He got the save, but it was really, really ugly.
Well, in regards, and excuse me, Alec brought it up just a minute ago, the Cardinals have shown some potential, especially Arenado. This is the Cardinals' Arenado now.
Yeah.
In terms of his swing. He's swinging a lot better, has had a couple of home runs already. Not that he's a long ball hitter. He's not. He's just a solid hitter, period. His defense has been outstanding, and he is putting all of the naysayers now to shame with the way he has led this team. All right, 2-0. 2-0 is what it is, folks. You have 160 games remaining in the season, and that's a long, long way to go. Not especially impressed with the Cardinals' pitching. Sonny Gray in the opener went 5, and then out of there he is. I wonder if that's the limit to what he can go. The bullpen did come in and pitch fairly well, but the fact is, what are they going to do against the big-timers? That's where you have your big question mark. When you get into their division, the Chicago Cubs, and in my opinion, the Cincinnati Reds, I think they're pretty doggone good. What kind of effect you're going to have on them, and then the rest of the schedule they go through, because they play the Yankees, and I think it's at Yankee Stadium this year.
Alec, I mean, you're our diehard Cardinal fan. You're wearing your Cardinals shirt today. Did you watch both games? Are you optimistic?
I was able to watch both games. You know, it's important not to get swept up in a moment of 2 games, because anybody can have 2 good games, anyone can have 2 bad games. No, Nolan Arenado's he had 2 hits in both games. And yesterday he had 2 hits, a walk, and a hit by pitch. So he got on base 4 of the 5 times he got up to plate. Wilson Contreras has looked terrible. He's got a lot of strikeouts. I don't believe he's got a hit yet, but that's an important piece of the offense. And again, Nolan Arenado's had 2 great days. Wilson Contreras has had 2 bad days. Everybody is going to have 2 bad days and 2 great days this season.
Oh, yeah.
It's just a very long year. So I've liked what I've seen with the guys around those big names. I've liked that Newt Barr and Donovan have had timely hits. The defense there's already been a handful of splashy plays from the defense, and that's what this Cardinal team will need. They will need the defense to be excellent behind subpar pitching. They will need average hitters, I think. I would love to see this team's batting average go up. We don't need them as much power. We just let everyone get on base and let some of this speed do the work.
And to that end, Alec, I was a little worried when Jordan Walker got hit on the wrist yesterday with a pitch. He shook it off and said, hey, I'm fine, all that. The next day, which is today, I'm anxious to see whether or not he's in that lineup, because where he was hit are very small, finite bone structure in there, and sometimes that swells up pretty badly overnight.
Swelling will go up. He does, though, through 2 days, I believe, have the hardest hit ball, and he had 118 miles per hour off the bat.
Oh, wow.
It was like he smoked one. So there's been a lot of good, but, I mean, we know the problem on paper, and the problem is the pitching. We're starting rotation, and everybody's starting rotation is going to get some bumps and bruises along the way. Guys are going to miss time, so it's already shallow. What happens when the shallow end already gets more shallow?
Speaking of which, the Detroit Tigers and the Los Angeles Dodgers conclude their series today. So who's on the mound for Detroit?
Who is it? There's a Flaherty?
Jack Flaherty.
Mm-hmm.
Well.
Facing the team to whom he was traded last year and helped propel them into a world championship. And here he is back to the team that traded him. This will be pretty good.
Any quick takes on just what we've seen so far? I think the story about the Yankees we talked about. Another story that's kind of interesting to me is Rafael Devers has struck out 10 times in 3 games.
He's the DH.
Yeah, and there's some talk about him being really unhappy with them signing Bergman and taking his spot at third base.
Well, he can be as unhappy as he wants. If that's what the front office dictates and he wants his salary and wants to play, then the DH is where he's going to be. Bregman's a good third baseman, a very good third baseman. In the case of the newly appointed DH, I think he, rather than being unhappy, I think it's more trouble adjusting to his circumstance. He's been the third baseman for his career. Devers he has to make a mental adjustment to where he is and sitting on the bench when the rest of the guys are out on the field. In baseball, it's such a finite game of importance and mentality that I wonder if that hasn't had an effect on him.
How important do you think that is? I mean, do you really think guys have to make a mental adjustment when they switch from being a regular everyday in the field player to being a DH?
Yes, I do. You have to. Pitchers make a great mental adjustment when they're relievers going to starters and vice versa, because that's a change in mentality. Yep. It's a change of preparation, and the same with the position players. You're going from a DH who is really not staying warm on the bench as such. Now they're swinging a bat or pounding a glove or something, but that's not like playing defense. So, yes, I think that probably figures into what his problems are at the moment.
Did you ask if a small change in your day-to-day procedure would impact a baseball player? The most ritualistic, routine sport of them all.
Let's talk to Wade Boggs.
Superstitious, ritualistic.
I woke up on my left side instead of my right, and I had a terrible outing today.
Don't put me in the lineup.
I was like, I need to sit the bench.
How many of these guys, too, when you read about their biographies, have to have a special meal before each game?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Wade Boggs, chicken.
Wade Boggs.
Had to have chicken before the game.
I remember Nomar Garcia-Parra, his whole batter's box thing, and I was like, dude, come on.
Human rain delay.
Yeah.
Nomar Garcia-Parra. I remember when I was a kid, we still wore the stirrup socks.
Uh-huh.
The socks you wore over your white tube socks.
Yep.
And I always wore mine out. The stirrup part I didn't put under my foot. It would hang out of the back of my shoe.
Oh.
And I wore my jersey untucked because I'd gotten a hit dressed like that one day.
There you go.
And I would never go away for it. And then when I coached, I wouldn't step on the lines. The Sparky Anderson thing, I just wouldn't step on the lines. Very superstitious. It's so great, right?
That's what makes
baseball.
Makes it baseball.
Yeah, it's part of the beauty of it. And what we're talking about right now, we're talking about 2 games into the season, we're talking about how good and how bad teams are. That's the hope springs eternal part of baseball. At this part of the year, every team's in contention. Every team could win the World Series right now, and that's the beauty of it.
Colorado Rockies have already been eliminated, Josh. Yeah, I mean, I think the stories are really, really interesting. One of the stories that got brought up at the game that I watched the other day is the guy that was the closer for the Yankees, very solid guy, Clay Holmes, hit a bump towards the end part of the season, loses his job to Luke Weaver, who pitched for the Royals. Mm-hmm. Luke Weaver loses his job when they get Devin Williams from the Milwaukee Brewers, and Clay Holmes goes to the Mets and is a starter. He's their opening day starter.
Nice.
So, I mean, it's just weird stuff like that happens in baseball. You know, Austin Wells hitting a home run to lead off the game the other day. First ever Yankee to lead off a game with a home run. And you think about all the great players that played for that franchise, and not a single one ever hit a leadoff home run.
Just an amendment to that, not the first Yankee to hit it, first player ever. The first catcher ever.
Yes, but
in
he was
Major
also
League
the
Baseball history.
First Yankee to hit one, too.
Well, obviously he's going to be, if he's the first player ever, he's going to be the first Yankee.
What I mean is he's the first Yankee that ever hit a leadoff home run, not just a Yankee catcher.
On opening day?
On opening day.
Okay.
Never in their history have they ever done that.
Yeah, and that's crazy.
You want to talk opening day streaks? Tyler O'Neill has now home run in six opening days in a row. 4 of them we had the privilege of seeing in St. Louis. That he comes dialed in before his body fails
I would
and
like
gets
to know
on the IL.
who these individuals are who look this up.
Elias
what are you
Sports
doing
Bureau.
for a living? What are you
That is
concentrating
their job.
on?
That's all they do for a living.
But we eat that stuff up, and in baseball more than any other sport, I think,
Sure.
right?
Oh,
Sure.
yeah, I would agree, yeah.
there's
But it's, the nature of baseball allows things like that on a more often, I think. You know, the stat sheet for baseball is huge. All the different things that can happen and do happen. And so then you get these unique things, you know, and I love it. I think it's great. I mean, it adds to the mystique and the beauty of baseball.
When we come back, we'll talk about this other little sporting event that's going on called the NCAA tournament. We'll discuss that next on Ned Talk.
You're listening to Ned Talk on 104.7 The Cave, a proud member of the Chiefs Radio Network. Back to Ned Talk on 104.7 The Cave, a proud member of the Chiefs Radio Network.
So exciting this time of year. Baseball's underway. Got the draft coming up. Got a bunch of stuff happening. Masters. I think we already had the big Indianapolis 500. And when is that?
What now? Well, we've already had it, did you say?
Did we have it? Or when is that?
That's Memorial Day.
That's Memorial Day.
Mm-hmm.
What big race do we have that always is in the spring?
The Daytona 500.
There you go.
I knew it was
The
a
other
500. I knew it was a 500 something.
Right. I'm with you on this one, Joe.
I gave away that I'm not a huge fan of
with
car
you.
racing. I'm not knocking it. I'm just not a big fan of it.
You could have told me it was the Talladega 500. I'd be like, okay, that's cool.
It's the Ozark Empire Fairground 500.
Yeah. There we go.
Yeah.
I did go to a lot of those races when I was a kid.
Nice.
I had two friends that were big into racing. One was a Mark Martin fan, and the other one was a Larry Phillips fan.
All right.
And so it was always a huge rivalry when I was a kid.
Larry Phillips won everything in sight. He was racing in this town.
And he smoked while he was doing it, too.
Oh, yeah.
So he was a really talented driver there. When we're talking about the NCAA tournament, well, I mean, think about it. You're going 100 miles an hour smoking a cigarette. I mean,
That's impressive.
that is impressive.
Should watch me compose a text going 120.
No thanks.
I'm kidding.
The tournament is almost gone chalk here.
Interestingly enough, depending on what happens today, all 4 top seeds may be the Final Four. And 2 of them are already, and that's Florida and Duke. They are in there, and they were top seeds. Now you have Houston and Auburn playing later on today. Houston, very, very fortunate to be where they are. It wasn't a trick play. It's one that's used not in a common basis, but it is used in basketball every so often, where the inbounder at the baseline with just a few seconds remaining throws the ball inbound and the receiver right back to the kid who threw it in. And he dunked the ball. And that was the win right there for Houston. Okay. Again, talented basketball team without question, but fortunate to be there. Then you have the Auburn Ball Club, and they're a machine as well. But they both play today, and not each other. They are probably going to have some pretty good contests, but you have a chance at having all 4 top seeds as the Final Four.
When was the last time that happened?
Think about probably 5, 6, 7 years ago. There's usually an upset in there involved, but not so far.
And even so, in this year, 3 of the 4 Elite 8 matchups were the 1 versus 2. So
Yeah,
if
they
you want
were.
to go chalk with the 1 seeds, it was chalk with the 2s, except for St. John's. St. John's went down, but it was just a lowly 3 seed in their place. So, I mean,
A lowly
little 3 seed. So, when they compose these brackets, they, 1, 1, 1, 1, 2, 2, 2, 2 for those top teams. Well, as far as the Elite 8 goes, it was 7 of their perceived top 8 teams made it. So they, on the one hand, you can say they got it right, and not to say it hasn't been an exciting tournament because the games have still been good. But
there was a storyline, too, Alec, earlier this week about have we seen the last of the Cinderella teams winning a championship in basketball? I can tell you have not, because the parity level in college basketball is so good that on any given day, a lower-seeded team can come up and win, but it's how they've played consistently. So, yeah, I think it's going to happen again somewhere along the line, but obviously not this year.
Do you like that? Do you like that the tournament's gone chalk, or would you prefer to see somebody there that you didn't expect?
Oh, there's arguments both ways to it. And indeed, for instance, if the Missouri State Bears were one of those Cinderella teams, you'd want to see that. Last time that happened was the last time they were in the NCAA tournament, 1999. Good Lord. Where's the time gone? But the fact of the matter remains that, when it's a Cinderella team that comes along, you've had them before, Wichita State, Creighton, Butler was in there, and what was the team in Virginia? That
VCU, Virginia Commonwealth.
Oh, yeah.
Yep.
That Larnago had. Yeah, they were all good teams.
And then,
That's the beauty of basketball is that it lends itself to that more than most sports, I think. Because
Well,
it's
yeah,
5
with the
on 5
numbers of teams involved is why.
Yeah.
I think we all love rooting for that underdog team. It's fun to see, but like you said, to the other side of it, it's also really fun to watch what are the best teams play against each other, and that's what we're getting now. There may be no underdog, but also, don't you kind of want to see Duke play against Houston? Don't you want to see Duke play against Florida? Or it's like and especially with the amount of SEC teams that are left, we might be getting the third third or maybe even fourth matchup potentially for some of these schools against each other. And that you want to talk about bad blood. Now the stakes have only gotten higher, so it makes for good basketball both ways. Whether you've got that underdog team that you connect with, or you've got the best, highest level of competition going against each other is also a joy to watch.
In the quarterfinal, Alec, you had Kentucky, Tennessee,
yep.
And that two long-time rivals. It turned out to be a pretty one-sided match. Tennessee won it huge, but yeah, you do get them. And here you have, when the Final Four comes up, it's not all SEC, but you have Florida in there. You have Auburn in there. Hey, and anything can happen.
It could be Auburn, Florida, and Tennessee. You could have three SEC teams and Duke. Can't forget Duke.
Same question to you, Alec. How do you feel? I mean, would you prefer to see somebody like Butler in there in the mix in the Final Four, or are you happy seeing this the ones all making it?
I probably would. It'd be fun to see one of those double-digit seed teams that goes on the Magic run. It's always fun to connect with that, but it's also in the back of your mind, you tend to know that it's going to come to an end at some point, and usually it's before the Final Four happens. But in my time of watching sports, adamantly, Butler's the one team that really got close and almost did it. That little out of nowhere school. There's been some Loyola that they had a really good run. The Florida Gulf Coast had a pretty fun run, and it's really neat to see for a bit. But you always know, like, how far can they take it? And usually it's about right now when the depth and the talent just ultimately catch up to them. Because I mean, has a double digit seed ever won? I don't believe.
Yes, there was an 11 that won, but I can't recall.
What was NC State seeded with Valvano when they won it all?
Don't remember. But they had a good team. It was not one of the top seeded teams, but Valvano, of course, that was also a bit of a fluke too. I've forgotten the guy's name now, the big forward who tipped in the goal at the end. But it happens, and that is, again, because of the amount of talent that we have in the country.
Sure.
But at this point in time, you just want good matchups now at this point. And when I feel the upside of when it is gone chalk is that you're probably going to get consistently better matchups because these teams are really close to each other. The difference between the 1 seed and the 2 seed is typically very minimal. I mean, Tennessee's hung in there and played with the Floridas and Auburns all season long, and they may be a 2 as opposed to a 1, but they're right there, and so I think it's just going to make for good matchups here down the stretch.
And on more than one occasion, when you have that kind of a level, it's a break somewhere along the line. An official's call, perhaps. The one yesterday, the backcourt call on the reach around that the kid made with about 7 seconds to go in the game that eliminated any kind of last second shot. Those things happen. That's part of the game.
Oh yeah.
Florida and Duke have punched their tickets. They're in the Final Four. Ned, we were talking off the air. Who do you think's at risk today? I mean, if you can say that somebody's at risk of the 2 higher seeds.
I mentioned earlier Houston. I think they are the more vulnerable of the 2 teams in there. Auburn, they're both really good teams, but Houston has shown some vulnerability as the season has worn on, and Kelvin Sampson does a great job with that team. They're very smooth and very quick. They operate a lot on quickness. That's their mantra going into the game. But I just have to think that they show a possibility of perhaps faltering in the stretch.
What do you think, Alec?
I'd have to agree, and it's less about Houston and more about the opponent. I just have more faith in Tennessee than I do Michigan State. Michigan State is a very solid program, obviously a 2 seed. They've had an excellent year, but at this point in today's basketball, it seems you got to be able to score. And Michigan State is the one that's scoring potential is a little lower than the likes of Tennessee or their opponent today, Auburn, or Houston as well. So I just So I would say that Tennessee is a stronger opponent that Houston has to face as opposed to Auburn going against Michigan State. That being said, we could sit here this time tomorrow, and Michigan State is more than capable of taking this thing the distance.
Well, that's the great thing about this. I mean, you could do all sorts of permutations of this and still be wrong, or you might be right one time out of all the times that are left, and still could make a case for any of these teams that are left to win a national championship.
Oh yeah, definitely.
When we come back, we'll talk. Well, we'll figure something out. What do you want to talk about, Ned?
Attendance at the UFL. Let's talk about that.
All right. When we come back. It's Ned Talk on 104.7 The Cave.
You're listening to Ned Talk on 104.7 The Cave, a proud member of the Chiefs Radio Network. Back to Ned Talk on 104.7 The Cave, a proud member of the Chiefs Radio Network.
We're going to talk startup football, startup league in football. I guess it's hard to say that it's a startup now that they're all the way into their third season that they're doing this. Sorry about that. I had to sneeze there. No, thank you, Ned. And Ned wanted to talk about this. I didn't have to force him or anything. Usually it's me to talk about
the
this.
reason is because of the nature of the game. It's totally out of season. Everybody admits to that. They started on March the 28th, which was Friday night, and they being the UFL, decided to put their darling marquee team in action, the St. Louis Battlehawks. They drew average 35,000 fans for the game up in St. Louis, which is about 30,000 more than all the other teams averaged. And they had the championship game up there because it was going to draw very well. So they put them in, had them playing the Houston Roughnecks down in Houston. I did not see any of it, and I don't think many other people did because you're watching the Final Four or Major League Baseball or whatever. So looked at the attendance, and they alleged 7,000, but fans in attendance, I don't know, wasn't even close to that, about 3,500, somewhere around there. But as we pointed out, that isn't their emphasis. The ticket sales, fine, that's a little gravy for them. It's the TV ratings. That's what they want to excel. That is where they'll sell their product to Fox and ESPN and whomever else wants these games. It's okay football. It is legitimate football in terms of being played on the field, but it's not the top name players in many cases, and it just is out of season, and the fans' interest is not there. How much is too much football? And I think this, in my opinion, is too much.
It's what we always talk about. There's so many other sports that are ramping up or ramping down in the case of basketball and hockey at this time of year. To throw another sport in the mix of that, you're fighting a really big uphill battle to try to gain that rating and gain that ground because, like Alec has said many times, by the time the Super Bowl's over, most everybody's done with football. We need a break. And so, it just does – I don't know. I don't know. It doesn't seem like it's going to work to me.
And all the while after the Super Bowl and this is starting up, the NFL's poking me and like – Combine's coming up soon.
Right.
Draft's coming up soon.
Draft is coming.
Let's talk about all that stuff. The NFL has bloated and inflated so much of the schedule throughout the calendar year that they just do not want you to ever have your mind off of it. No. I mean, this show here, we often open with talking about the latest in the Chiefs news. Now we are a Chiefs network, and so that's okay. But that is the nature of that sport. It is an undisputed, unquestionable fact. The NFL is the biggest sport in the nation by a sizable margin, and they do everything they can to keep it there. And one thing they don't want to cede is any room at the table, and that's the UFL trying to get a seat.
And Alec, the marketing is the best in the world. And that's not just an overstatement. The NFL is marketed better than anybody else, as you pointed out, virtually every week during the offseason. At least once a week, sometimes twice, there is an NFL free agent signing. Yep. And as you mentioned, the draft, and that'll be coming up here at the end of April. So you do have these, and then you get into the spring camps. They all have spring camps. Then they all have the fall camps, which open up late in the summer. It is right there every day, virtually every day of the calendar year, 365. You will find an NFL team mentioned or an NFL organizational mentioned somewhere along the line. It's very, very well done. Very well done, as is their TV plan. But again, if they go to 18 games, and that is a possibility, how much is too much?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, if you set your mind to the Wayback Machine, and Alec, this is before your time, so USFL probably had the best shot when it first came around because it had an inordinate amount of money that was behind it. And some big names, rather than go to the NFL, went to the USFL. And one of those was Steve Young. And there was a couple other players. Herschel Walker went there too. So there were some big names there, and it didn't make it. It didn't succeed. It didn't even make a dent in the NFL.
Right. And part of that was because they thought they could go head-to-head with the NFL, who had already established all of that marketing and TV revenue and player salaries and everything.
But let me ask you guys this question. Obviously, there's a genie that's in a bottle in St. Louis where fans are, I guess, starved for football, and they have got in and backed this St. Louis Battlehawks team, and they show up and they have a good time and they party. And when you watched on TV, it doesn't look like, oh, they're trying to avoid panning the stands because they don't want to show that there's nobody there. There's butts in the seats there. How do they accomplish that? Where do they go? Because it looks like they contracted a little bit because I see some names missing from this list that were there last year. But where do they go to find teams in markets where they're hungry for football year round?
Well, you go to adjunct leagues. There are a lot of semi-pro football around the country, and you go to guys who are not going to be drafted, who will go to NFL camps and get cut and so forth and so on, and you appeal to their ego. Hey, you can make it in the UFL, and we'll pay you some pretty good bucks and so forth and so on. That's where they get their players. But they obviously, and anybody who watches football at all, yeah, it's okay football, but it isn't the same. It is not the real thing, right. And the real thing is what you see in the fall.
What I mean, though, is where do they find cities like St. Louis? Where do they find places where they can replicate that?
Well, that's a good question.
It's the money factor, because they go to St. Louis, and St. Louis has, they've had NFL franchises, Cardinals and Rams and so forth. So there is a certain element of the public that does react very well if an invitation is offered. But there are others like Birmingham, Alabama, and Houston. They have a team, but you got the Houston Texans down there. San Antonio, they haven't. It's just appealing to where you think there's a level of interest and where the money is to finance a franchise.
Is the Arlington team Arlington, Virginia?
No, it's Arlington, Texas.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
I do feel like St. Louis is almost just a perfect storm as a team that's very, very recently, robbed of an NFL franchise. It wasn't like it was one of the most profitable ones, but it was popular. The Rams were. The St. Louis backs its sport teams. They backed the Cardinals forever. They like the Blues. There's a women's soccer team up there that has a really good draw. So it's like it's a good sports town. And they didn't want to lose that NFL team, so they bring in the Battlehawks, and it finds a niche little market. But how many of those cities exist that it can thrive in? I think, like, recently the Raiders just left for Las Vegas. Do you try a team out in Oakland? But they've lost the Raiders before. They're probably not quite as – they're not – they're like, they're probably thinking they'll be back.
And more importantly, to what Ned's saying, can Oakland financially support a professional franchise anymore? Because aren't the Athletics leaving too?
They're gone.
They're already gone. So you look at Oakland, you look at San Diego, lost the Chargers. But so there's those are the types of cities that to me come up as the obvious first choice. But then, how do they actually latch that way? Or again, like you said, it's your tone is always, it's good football. It's all right. It's all right. You can tell what you mean, and what you mean is it is not as good as what you're getting. And for those of us that watch, when you turn it on, it doesn't take long to go, so this is This is what C plus B minus football
If all the
looks
other
like.
channels went off, yeah. I might watch it, or I might watch.
If I need to take a nap, I'll turn it.
If I might watch the grass grow, I'm not really sure which one. The farthest west they go looks like it's either Houston or San Antonio. I mean, think maybe a city like San Diego or Oakland would be a good good fit for a team in this league.
Well, yeah, I just try to think of teams that had an NFL franchise that no longer do, and that's why St. Louis, I think, is the what'd you say, perfect storm, because they loved the Cardinals, they loved the Rams, and then suddenly they're gone, and they're like, okay, what now? And so that's probably why they support the Battlehawks so well. But Oakland, I don't feel like Oakland really cared that the Raiders left again.
No, I think you're wrong there. I think there's a diehard Raiders core fan. I think that at the end, the divorce was final for them, but I think they would support a team that came in there.
I think if you want to get a news story, just go to Seattle, call them the Supersonics, hope you don't get sued, and see what happens.
Right.
Just start if you don't have a team that lost a football team, who lost a basketball team, who lost a baseball team.
Another one's Vancouver.
Yeah.
They had NBA out there, the Vancouver Grizzlies, and now they're Memphis. So, it has happened to cities. It's where you have the financial backing, where you have the corporate generals of whatever circumstance might be in terms of business that makes the backing what it is, and evidently they have in St. Louis that with the beer corporations and so forth and so on, that has happened. So right now they look like they're pretty good. Again, they haven't played any home games yet, but the interest appears to be there. But just like Alec and Josh talked about, it had been there before. Many of the others have not.
Right.
Do you think there's any league that's ripe for having a startup come in and do some damage? I mean, obviously we talked about the NFL, no. But what about baseball? What about hockey? What about basketball?
I don't think baseball can be used in that category because it's already, you have your teams in there, and the sport already is having trouble adjusting to whatever society wants in baseball. And you get criticism, the game's too slow and all that. It isn't for me. I love it. But the fact of the matter remains there's a general perception that the younger fans want to see something that's quicker and more action-oriented and so forth. So I don't think baseball is going to fall into that category where a second league might be formed.
Yeah.
But as far as the others, I don't know. We're so stable right now that I don't think that would happen.
Hockey is slowly expanding. I mean, they added the Las Vegas Golden Knights a few years ago. They added the Utah.
Utah's an Arizona trend. They came from Arizona.
Oh, that's right.
It's Utah. It's the Seattle Kraken.
Seattle Kraken are the new team. So, but they're doing it one team at a time, which I think is probably the right thing for them because they're not generating the revenue that other sports are anyway. So they've got to be more careful about it. But I don't know about the NBA. I don't feel like the NBA is viable enough to continue expansion.
It's kind of like the NFL. The reason they're trying for other football is because football is so massive.
Right.
It's kind of an opposite problem for these other leagues. They're not big enough. It's like there's not enough people watching the NBA or NHL or MLB to be like, you want a second one? It's like, who's that for? If there's already if they want viewership to go up in these other ones, especially when you've got college basketball is as big as it is, that would essentially be a third basketball league. And that's why, college football is as big as it is. This UFL is essentially a third football option. And, it's there, but I would say the following for college baseball and college hockey is not big. I am not among them. But those leagues are already trying to get viewership up in their own right. If someone tried to come in and piggyback and be like, it's time for the National Baseball League, who's with me? It's like probably not many.
No.
Right.
Well, maybe if they did something, I don't know.
Again, you have
50-cent hot dogs at every stadium.
Well, financial backing, the total financial backing, and the TV ratings. They have to be there. A TV contract has to be there.
Well, that one team that just really came out of nowhere last year, they were a barnstorm team, the Bananas.
The Savannah Bananas.
Savannah Bananas.
They're the Harlem Globetrotters of baseball.
Nice. They were just all over the place last year, and ESPN even did some of their games. Not that that's the kind of thing that, you look at and you go, well, this is a viable competition, but I found it really interesting the way that just came out of nowhere and seemed to kind of fit the bill for people for something that they were looking to see.
A form of entertainment, It's like, and it's almost shocking for how long the Harlem Globetrotters have been doing it. It's like, what if we did this in another sport?
Yeah,
it's pseudo fixed, but more for fun competition.
They were the first, and that's why, because they're the originals, and that's what it says on the uniform, the original Harlem Globetrotters. There have been substitutes that have come in, the magicians and things like that, but they haven't lasted. It's always the first one.
When we come back, we'll tell you what we're watching on TV this afternoon, just in case you care. It's Ned Talk.
You're listening to Ned Talk on 104.7 The Cave, a proud member of the Chiefs Radio Network. Back to Ned Talk on 104.7 The Cave, a proud member of the Chiefs Radio Network.
We didn't talk a lot about the Chiefs today. They don't have much going on. It's starting to kind of get down to that time for draft stuff. I mean, that's what everybody's thinking about. I looked at mock drafts before we went on the air. I thought it was interesting. One draft had them taking an offensive lineman, and another draft was talking about the need to replace Chris Jones because he's getting older and that they'll take a defensive lineman. Another draft I read said they're going to take a wide receiver. So it was really interesting. I also saw a draft that said Shedeur Sanders was going to fall all the way down to the I owe you a dollar, the Los Angeles Chargers. Going to fall that far.
I wouldn't say that's falling that far. Sanders is a good player. I did notice his dad was quoted yesterday as saying that he'll be happy wherever he goes. And his dad is certainly going to be happy wherever he goes because he just signed an extension in Colorado that pays him something like $10 million
to $12 million a year. Yep.
Yeah. So how do you feel, Alec? Because you're really the last team standing in the Aaron Rodgers lottery.
I would love to see Shedeur Sanders fall because but I don't think he will. No. These quarterbacks only rise at this time of year. So the one name that Pittsburgh keeps getting tied to in quarterbacks draft is Jackson Dart out of Ole Miss. But I wouldn't be shocked if he puts on a couple good private workouts if he's gone before Pittsburgh picks, I believe, at 21.
And he's a good player.
But these quarterbacks you see it every year, and whether that pans out or not, you get your Mitch Trubisky's who people trade up for, and that was an absolute burnout. Yep. And then you get the Chiefs that trade up for Patrick Mahomes, and it's because it's the most valuable position in football by a mile. And if you have a need at it, you have to. Unfortunately, you just have to take swings until you get it right, because until you get it right, you're not a team that's going to compete. If you're bringing Kenny Pickett to a Patrick Mahomes fight week in and week out, you're just not going anywhere. Kenny, Cleveland Brown quarterback Kenny Pickett. They told Myles Garrett, if you stay, we'll bring in a Super Bowl winning quarterback, and they brought in Kenny Pickett.
Kenny Pickett.
So, J.J. McCarthy is the standing quarterback, the only quarterback that they have on the roster right now in Minnesota, and apparently that is the team that Aaron Rodgers wants to go to. He wants to completely replicate Brett Favre's career.
The Favre triangle. That's the talk that they say. Minnesota's apparently hasn't ruled it out, but if I was Aaron Rodgers, that's an enticing place. You saw what they did for Sam Darnold last year. That's an offense that's friendly for the quarterback, and they've got Jordan Addison and Justin Jefferson, arguably the best receiver in football, and they've got T.J. Hawkinson at tight end, Aaron Jones at running back, a decent offensive line. I also, if I was a quarterback looking at teams to play for, Minnesota's not low on that list. They're got to be pretty high. So I can see why he would want to do that, but why? If you're Minnesota, you invested that first-round draft pick in J.J. McCarthy for a reason. Unless you see the injury recovery is not going well, I don't see a reason why you go get another quarterback. Clearly he was your plan, and you lost Sam Darnold. Time to enact Plan A, unless his knee is just not healing right.
So Aaron Rodgers wearing the brown and gold next year.
Brown, black and gold,
whatever.
I won't let Brown stand with the Browns being in our division, but
it's all the same. I've heard it both ways.
I think the most. Are you colorblind? Are we finding out that's on air, live on air? But I think that it's the two most likely outcomes for Aaron Rodgers right now are Pittsburgh or retirement.
How does that make you feel?
Bad.
Okay, that's what we wanted. That's
Sad.
That's what we're digging for.
Bad. Don't want to see it.
Nope.
The longer this takes, the more time I have to come to terms with the fact that it probably will happen.
Also, another little interesting dialogue this week that Russell Wilson and the New York Giants may be a perfect fit for the Giants. Now, that's the New York media. I understand that completely.
Because everybody in New York hates everybody else in New York, so they might as well hate their quarterback who hates them.
They hate Philadelphia worse.
Well, then yes, that's the only thing they hate worse than themselves is Philadelphia.
All right, Ned, what are you going to do this afternoon? Are you watch any sports?
Well, I will if the Cardinals are on free market open-the-air TV like they were yesterday, and I was able to see that game. I'm not sure they will be today. Probably watch them, but certainly I'll watch the basketball coming up later on.
What do you think, Alec? What are you doing?
There'll be a combination of the baseball and the Final Four going on. And because we didn't talk about it real quick at the end, Blues continue their win streak. 9-game win streak for the St. Louis Blues, holding down the playoff spot. It's 2019 all over again, we believe.
And what are you doing, Josh?
I might watch the Washington Capitals because Ovechkin is 5 away from tying Gretzky's record, and they're playing Buffalo today, who's the worst team in their division. So he could get a hat trick if they feed him enough.
I'm going to go home and watch some torpedo bats.
Bats!
There you go.
Yeah, so...
Joe, I want you to tune up, if you will, Gloria for Alec here. Let them. I don't think they're playing that year, but that's their theme from when they won the Stanley
I was like,
Cup.
that was the 2019 theme.
All right, thanks to Ned Reynolds, Alex Scott, Josh Roberts, Brian Tyndall, Mike the Intern, and our mad scientist, Corbin Campbell. We'll see you guys next Sunday at noon for Ned Talk.